Hello guys, this is Autist and Autistic Expandless Brain, and today we're going to be going over this article. I may have two more articles after this article, and yeah, without further ado, let's get into it.
Treating autism as a problem. The connection between gay conversion therapy and ABA. Alex Kronstein, the 11th of July, 2018. Japuktuk, Halifax. This Monday I attended a protest at Grand Parade in Halifax against coming out ministries. During the week of the 20th to the 28th of July, the Maritime Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church will be hosting Coming Out Ministries, a group of redeemed ex-gay spiritual leaders. At their camp meeting 2018 in Pugwash, they plan to share personal accounts of how they were freed from the chains of homosexuality, plucked from the burning, redeemed of being gay, lesbian, bisexual or queer, and cured of their transgender or genderqueer identity through prayer, devotion and conversion therapies.
So, anyway, yeah, that's what the article's going to be about. It's not going to be about the LGBT community. It will mostly be about around ABA as it says, but that was just a random section. So, yeah, we'll be right here.
The protest at Grand Parade was organized by the Nova Scotia Rainbow Action Project, the Youth Project, and Halifax Pride, with the hope of convincing the Seventh-day Adventist Church to uninvite coming out ministries from their annual camp meeting. The protesters also want to see Nova Scotia pass a law to ban the gay conversion therapy. There was a petition to sign, and several speakers, including Julie Hollenbach and Suzanne Litke from NSRAP, Kate Chuan, Executive Director of the Youth Project, and social worker Robert Wright. After the scheduled speakers, they opened the microphone up for anyone in the crowd who wished to speak. At that point, I got up and gave a short speech on the connection between gay conversion therapy and autistic conversion therapy, also known as applied behavioral analysis, ABA. To understand the connection, I first have to give some background.
Okay. We'll be right back with this in a minute. Okay, guys, we are back. We're gonna go and start through the next section. Let's start with that now. What is ABA?
What is ABA? Applied behavioral analysis has long been considered the gold standard of intervention for autism as defined by the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. Behavior analysis is the scientific study of principles of learning and behavior. Two primary areas of study include experimental analysis of behavior, the basic science of the discipline, and has, over many decades, accumulated a substantial and well-respected body of research literature on how behavior is learned and changes over time. The experimental analysis of behavior is the scientific foundation of applied behavior analysis. Applied behavior analysis, ABA, a systematic approach for influencing socially important behavior through the identification of reliably related environmental variables and the production of behavior change techniques that make use of those findings. Practitioners of behavior analysis provide services consistent with the dimensions of ABA. Supporters of ABA say that it's meant to increase positive skills and behaviors and reduce or eliminate problem behaviors in autistic children. Autistic children are often signed up for ABA or derivatives of it as soon as they are diagnosed. Their parents are usually told their kids need this therapy right away for a good start in life. However, an ever-increasing number of autistic adults, non-autistic parents of autistic children, and even some former therapists are calling this idea into question. They say that ABA is harmful, traumatizing and abusive, that it treats autism as a problem to be fixed, and that its ultimate goal is to make autistic children pass as non-autistic. Moreover, they say that when autistic people's natural ways of communicating, moving, and interacting with the world are suppressed, it can cause serious, long-lasting harm.
So, yeah. That is true. And the thing that autistic children need to be, fixed is very prevalent in ABA. So yeah, that's very prevalent in ABA, and yes, a growing number of autistic adults are going out to practice, and some non-autistic parents. Why I say some is not because not all are going out to practice. Even though they should be going out to practice, they are not. But yeah, like here, the author says that ABA says that it's a problem, and says that autistic behaviors are a problem. Yes, that is actually what is said.
Positive.
Yeah, positive skills is a big thing. Is a big thing in ABA. It can cause everlasting harm. There are people that believe that it is abusive. I do as well. But let's continue.
Moreover, they say that when autistic people's natural ways of communicating, moving, and interacting with the world are suppressed, it can cause serious, long-lasting harm. Sound familiar? Roots of ABA. You have to build the person. The founding father of ABA is generally considered to be Ivar Lovaas, a Norwegian-American psychologist and professor at the University of California, Los Angeles UCLA. He believed that autistic children were not even people. As Lovaas once said, you see, you start pretty much from scratch when you work with an autistic child. You have a person in the physical sense. They have hair, a nose and a mouth. But they are not people in the psychological sense. One way to look at the job of helping autistic kids is to see it as a matter of constructing a person. You have the raw materials, but you have to build the person.
Yeah, that was actually a quote from Ivar Lovaas. And Ivar Lovaas was just a really horrible person. But let's continue.
Lovaas developed what he believed to be a comprehensive way to build the person and called it applied behavioral analysis. His recommendation was that autistic children receive 40 hours of ABA therapy a week. One of his most important goals was to shape and mold their behaviors so they would appear more like typically developing children. Lovaas felt this was the only way autistic children would ever be able to learn anything, and he would often employ harsh aversive techniques such as withholding affection, withholding food, physical punishments, and even electric shocks. The strong and punitive aversives Lovaas suggested may not be as widely used today, but the reliance on rewards and punishment continues in other therapies and interventions that use the principles of ABA, which I'll discuss in a future article. Some therapists argue that the more modern forms of ABA are more humane approaches, but they are nonetheless still based in the idea that autistic ways of being in the world are unacceptable and must be eradicated. So what's the connection to gay conversion therapy? So what's the connection to gay conversion therapy? Well, Lovaas was also substantially involved in the Feminine Boy Project, which has strong connections to what is today known as gay conversion therapy. Psychologist George Reckers, a key figure in the world of conversion therapy, and company, founder of the notoriously anti-gay Family Research Council, used Lovaas's techniques to treat so-called deviant sex role behaviors in male children. And when you think about it, even if Lovaas had no connections at all to gay conversion therapy, ABA has enough similarities to gay conversion therapy that many autistics refer to it as autistic conversion therapy.
I want to say Ivar Lovaas did have some hand in gay conversion therapy. Once again, I'm not 100% certain on that one, but yeah.
There's more waves to be made. I am very grateful to the organizers of the protest for doing it, and I'm eternally thankful for the chance to be able to speak. My presentation was well received by everyone, and a few people came up to speak with me afterward. All I can say is, there's more waves to be made against ABA in Canada. Which is why my next article will take a closer look at ABA in Canada, especially Nova Scotia, who's fighting back against it, and what we can do instead.
Okay, I'm assuming they're not.
Which is why my next article will take a closer look at ABA in Canada, especially Nova Scotia, who's fighting back against it, and what we can do instead. See also, SAR, the 18th of July, Safer Spaces in Pugwash Autism Awareness of Acceptance, two very different mindsets if you can. Please support the Nova Scotia Advocate so that it can continue to cover issues such as poverty, racism, exclusion, workers' rights and the environment in Nova Scotia. A paywall is not an option, since it would exclude many readers who don't have any disposable income at all. We rely entirely on one-time donations and a tiny but mighty group of dedicated monthly sustainers.
Okay, so now we're gonna get on to the next article. See you guys in a minute. But before we get on to the next article, I do want to plug in the subreddit and Discord server promotion. So I'll see you guys back after that plays. Let's roll. Promotion.
I have a Discord server for the subscribers of this YouTube channel. The invite link is in the description. As the server is set to private due to Discord flagging it as having bad words in the server title, even though there are no bad words in the name. Nonetheless, the invite link can still be found in the description. Please join the server if you have a Discord account. The server's name is Autist and Autistic, explaining the Autistic Brain official YouTube community. The invite link to the server will be in the description, under link to our Discord server from our subscribers of this YouTube channel. I have a subreddit for subscribers of this YouTube channel. The link is in the description. It will be titled Link to Subscriber Subreddit for the YouTube channel talk after the video ends. Please join r/YT Autist official. Today.
Okay guys, we are back. Here is the article. Don't ask me why it's not letting me, here. We have something else we can do. Here, we can do this.
Voiceover on. Identities lost. North Korea's human rights violations against individuals with disabilities. Heading leveled. Dedication. Heading. HRNK staff members and a native of Chile and graduate of the London School of Economics. Caddy became a North Korean youth all around the world. The fight for equal rights for people with assistive touch. Assistive. Voiceover off.
But yeah, this is the name.
Voiceover up. Identities lost. North Korea's human rights violations against individuals with disabilities. Assistive. Voiceover off. Let's start the article.
All around the world, the fight for equal rights for people with disabilities is an uphill and seemingly endless battle. Even in developed countries, people with disabilities are often overlooked and undervalued. In any conversation about human rights, bringing people with disabilities to the table is imperative. In a situation as dire as the one in North Korea, it is almost unthinkable what someone with a disability may have to endure at the hands of the Kim regime, as they are one of the most vulnerable demographics in the world.
True.
Progress in disability rights over the last 2 decades or so. North Korea has made some outward progress in disability rights. A 1998 revision to North Korea's constitution mentions in Article 72 that those who are unable to work due to physical disabilities are eligible for free medical care. 1. In June 2003, North Korea passed the Law on Protection of Disabled People, which contains various protections and provisions for people with disabilities. 2. North Korea also signed the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2013 and ratified it in 2016. 3. The act was designed to protect the rights of people with disabilities and ensure that they are given equal treatment. This is one recommendation of the February 2014 report of the United Nations Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea (UNCOI) that North Korea actually implemented. 4.
So yeah, that's good that they implemented that.
There is some evidence that North Korea has made real changes in accordance with these legislative actions. When the regime passed the law in 2003, they put provisions in place for those with physical disabilities, and some were provided with wheelchairs, crutches, and prostheses. 5. There are now a number of orthopedic centers, such as the Hamhung Orthopedic Factory and the Hamhung Orthopedic Hospital, that focus on the needs of amputees or those born without limbs. 6. North Korean athletes with physical disabilities have also made several appearances at the Paralympics and at specialized events in Pyongyang.
Okay. We're gonna go change the screen reader. I will be right back. Okay, we're back.
There is some evidence that North Korea has made real changes in accordance with these legislative actions. When the regime passed the law in 2003, they put provisions in place for those with physical disabilities, and some were provided with wheelchairs, crutches, and prostheses. 5. There are now a number of orthopedic centers, such as the Hamhung Orthopedic Factory and the Hamhung Orthopedic Hospital, that focus on the needs of amputees or those born without limbs. 6. North Korean athletes with physical disabilities have also made several appearances at the Paralympics and at specialized events in Pyongyang.
That's cool.
The 2003 law also benefited people who are deaf and or blind, making devices such as hearing aids available. Workshops, specialized schools, and conferences like the Good Fellowship are now available for unknown percentages of the deaf and or blind population. 7. North Korea has also allowed a number of international programs to provide aid in this area. For example, Handicap International, an arm of the European Union, not only provides services to children who are deaf and or blind, but also helps to provide orthopedic services to those with physical disabilities. 8.
This is really cool, guys.
In May of 2017, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Catalina de Vendes-Aguilar, paid a visit to North Korea. This was the very first time a UN rapporteur had ever done so. Regarding her visit, she stated, "The government has shown openness to disability issues, in particular through the ratification of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and some progress in other areas, including the recognition of the Korean Sign Language as an official language of the DPRK." 9.
Huh. That's interesting. Let's gonna go into. I don't want to find. What am I doing? We're gonna go into the closer look section now.
A closer look. Due to these positive actions, many North Korea observers have concluded that disability rights is one area in which the country has improved. However, this conclusion is problematic because it ignores several significant aspects in the bigger picture. One of the most well-known North Korean escapees, Ji Song-ho, who was severely injured in an accident that caused him to lose his leg and hand, recalls being beat for 20 days by prison guards as they called him derogatory names. 10. This was in 2000, before North Korea passed the law on protection of disabled people, but after the 1998 revision to the Constitution, one could argue that things were still shifting, but we still do not know how people with disabilities are being treated in the prison system.
True. We don't.
The prison system aside, most of the facilities tailored to people with disabilities are located in Pyongyang or other large cities like Hamhung. It has been well documented that the country's elite, especially those living in Pyongyang, live much differently than the rest of North Korea. In his 2016 report, Pyongyang Republic, published by the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea, Robert Collins writes, "In general, privileges in North Korea are associated with food security, physical security, healthcare, education, and employment opportunities. However, the highest privilege under the Kim regime is widely considered to be residence in Pyongyang, especially and high-quality housing within the city." 11. If the highest privilege in North Korea is living in high-quality housing in Pyongyang, then the residents of that housing also have the highest level of access to other privileges, such as food security and healthcare. Therefore, how people with disabilities belonging to these elite families are treated almost certainly is not the same as how they are treated in smaller cities or more rural provinces.
Let's read through this real quick.
If the highest privilege in North Korea is living in high-quality housing in Pyongyang, then the residents of that housing also have the highest level of access to other privileges, such as food security and healthcare. Therefore, how people with disabilities belonging to these elite families are treated almost certainly is not the same as how they are treated in smaller cities or more rural provinces.
Yep, true.
Furthermore, I found that almost none of the facilities or programs mentioned in available research aim to meet the needs of those with cognitive disabilities, such as Down syndrome, autism, or traumatic brain injuries. One exception is the Korean Rehabilitation Center for Children with Disabilities in Pyongyang, but this center serves only a tiny percentage of this demographic. In 2013, the clinic housed a mere 20 individuals, and only a fraction of them had cognitive disabilities. 12 UN Special Rapporteur de Van de Ziguiller stated, there is a range of challenges in realizing these rights for all persons with disabilities, not only for the blind and the deaf, or those with physical impairments. 13. She pointed out that North Korea tends to have a specific focus on disabilities that can be cured or rehabilitated. This model, of course, leaves out people with cognitive disabilities for which there is no cure. This runs parallel to reports from escapees such as Ji Song-ho, who recalls that he had never seen a person with Down syndrome until he went to South Korea. 14.
That's crazy.
This lack of representation is problematic on many levels. The fight for disability rights cannot stop with those who are, from a cognitive standpoint, considered typically developing, nor can the fight stop with those who are from families with money and power. When one investigates the whereabouts of those with cognitive disabilities, the trail goes alarmingly cold. Lost identities. To my knowledge, there are no in-depth reports available on the full spectrum of persons with disabilities in North Korea. Most of the evidence we have about how people with cognitive disabilities are treated comes from escapees' testimonies. In a 2013 report that primarily focused on women's rights, the Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights (NKHR) did attempt to investigate the human rights situation of people with disabilities. They found their investigation nearly impossible to complete due to lack of verifiable data and extreme cultural discrimination against this segment of the population. 15. While NKHR was not able to go as in-depth in their investigation as originally intended, its interviews with North Korean escapees provide what is, perhaps, the best compilation of information we currently have on the subject.
True.
Most of the North Korean people NKHR interviewed had come in contact with someone who had lost limbs and were familiar with facilities designed for those who are deaf and or blind. 16. There were also a few reports of facilities for mentally disabled people, which seemed to be referring to those with mental illness. 17. However, when asked about those with what the report refers to as genetic diseases, such as Down syndrome, most reported that such diseases were not common in North Korea. However, these types of disabilities are common all over the world, and the report links this gap in knowledge to both cultural discrimination and the possibility that doctors are not trained to identify these particular genetic disorders. 18. Furthermore, the NKHR report states, North Koreans often reported that the person family is cursed if a disabled child is born into the family. North Koreans have a common traditional saying that the person must have committed a crime in the previous life, and thus the disabled in the family is being punished in present life. 19. Therefore, there is the terrifying possibility that the North Korean regime is simply killing people with cognitive disabilities to eradicate what they perceive as a punishment or curse on society. This possibility is backed up by the fact that some of the women interviewed reported that, due to the social and financial pressure of having a child with a disability, many parents decide to kill these children through suffocation, abandon them, or allow the government to take them. 20. Lack of awareness, pure denial, or whatever the case may be. The consensus seems to be that those with cognitive disabilities are generally not protected by society or the government.
That's just horrible. That's horrible. It's so horrible. Let's continue.
The report also draws attention to a rumored facility called Hospital 83, allegedly located on a remote island. One interviewee who was part of the People's Safety Agency in North Korea before he defected reported that this facility conducts biological and chemical weapons tests on people with disabilities, among other gruesome practices, such as dismemberment and medical experimentation. He explained that parents often give their children away voluntarily or are coerced by the government to do so. It was also reported that families could be expelled, i.e. forcibly removed from their residences, and internally deported if found to be caring for someone with a disability. 21. Once a child has been given over to the government, the report stated that officials delete the identities of these individuals. This report is not a standalone record, and other defectors have reported similar stories of such ill fate.
Bro. Let's continue.
It is worth reiterating that science and statistics tell us that people with cognitive disabilities are born all over the world, including North Korea. Plainly stated, the reality seems to be that the regime abducts, tortures, and murders people with disabilities. To say that this demographic is not given a shred of human decency is an understatement, as they are not even allowed to take their identity to their graves. Disability rights are human rights. While North Korea may be making some progress, we cannot be satisfied with a lack of representation and protection of those with disabilities. The fact is that we still know very little about what is happening to people with cognitive disabilities, and the outlook does not look promising. We need more information about Hospital 83 and other institutions that serve similar alleged purposes. We must listen to escapees who tell stories of chemical and biological weapons being tested on these vulnerable individuals. We must call into question the whereabouts of countless children who have been erased from existence. North Korean individuals with disabilities are one of the most silenced, underrepresented groups in the world today. We must bring attention to these individuals when we speak of North Korean human rights, lest their identities be lost forever.
True. Is this just sources now? I think this is just sources. Hold on.
Emily would like to dedicate this article to her twin brother, Luke, who has Down syndrome. May the world someday see the value of all lives. Emily Spoy is a second-year Master of Public Affairs candidate at Indiana University. She is specializing in international relations.
Okay, that was that article. Let's get into the next article. See you guys in a minute. Okay, guys, we are back. This will be the last article of today.
Some thoughts on disability, sin, God in heaven. September 11th, 2019, posted in all blog posts. Theology Bible study. There are some big, deep, and in every other way large questions that often seem to crop up regarding disability and the Bible. Questions about sin, God in heaven that brains much bigger than mine have grappled with, written theological theses on, published books about, and more. But as I've been pondering a bit on this, and praying a bit too, initially in response to a recent Facebook discussion, I find my own current thinking on this settling on 3 key questions, and here's where I've got to with them so far, realizing that every day is a school day and that there is so much still to learn.
Okay, let's start with the first section.
Is disability due to sin? No. Jesus made that very clear. As he went along, Jesus, saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. John 9 verses 1-3. Disability is neither due to a person's sin nor the sin of their parents. This thinking is part of a widespread, long-standing and entirely incorrect narrative that associates disability and all disabled people with sin, suffering and being in need of charity. Jesus debunks that theory, although it remains all too prevalent today, throughout his ministry, not just in the passage from John's Gospel above, but including, for example, in his encounter with a disabled man lowered through the roof. Jesus sees the faith of the man and his friends first and includes him in his ministry of grace and forgiveness. See Luke 5 verses 17-26, only referring to the man's disability when challenged about his authority. Jesus dealt with the man's faith and forgiveness separately to his disability and healing, clearly demonstrating that the two are entirely independent of each other. But what, in his encounter with a man blind from birth, does but this happen so that the works of God might be displayed in him mean? Well, maybe the answer comes in the responses to the questions below.
Yeah. Well, let's keep going.
Does God cause people to be disabled? A big question, a highly contested question. Genesis tells us that God created people in his own image, all of them us. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. Genesis 1:27. Well, that seems quite clear. The Psalms tell us that God knitted us together in our mother's womb, that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, all of us. For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made, your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Psalm 139 hours, and 13 minutes 14. So we are all handcrafted, wonderfully, perfectly, we have the Maker's stamp on us.
Okay, so this is Psalm 139, 13 to 14. It is not 30 something hours or whatever it said. What did it say here?
139 hours, and 13 minutes 14.
No, it is not that. But let's continue.
So we are all handcrafted, wonderfully, perfectly, we have the Maker's stamp on us. In Exodus God tells Moses who gave human beings their mouths, who made them deaf or mute, who gives them sight or makes them blind. Is it not I, the Lord? Exodus 4:11. So, God makes everyone as they are, including with disabilities, and, returning to John 9:3, perhaps so that the works of God may be displayed in them, ? The works of God that were displayed in the man blind from birth included the miraculous healing that followed immediately afterwards, but perhaps Paul in his second letter to the Corinthian church is also referring to the same works of God, God's power, God's strength being displayed through Paul's own weakness, in this passage. I must go on boasting. Although there is nothing to be gained, I will go on to visions and revelations from the Lord. I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Whether it was in the body or out of the body I do not know, God knows. And I know that this man, whether in the body or apart from the body I do not know, but God knows, was caught up to paradise and heard inexpressible things, things that no one is permitted to tell. I will boast about a man like that, but I will not boast about myself, except about my weaknesses. Even if I should choose to boast, I would not be a fool, because I would be speaking the truth. But I refrain, so no one will think more of me than is warranted by what I do or say, or because of these surpassingly great revelations. Therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan, to torment me.
Okay. Let's continue.
3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. 2 Corinthians 12:1-10. So what these passages together seem to share with us then is that everyone, including disabled people, are made in God's image, are fearfully and wonderfully made, that God himself makes people with disabilities, and that this can be so that his works may be displayed. And this display of God's works is primarily through the strength of Christ's power resting on, and at work in, each person.
Okay, let's continue.
But what about someone who is disabled due to a car crash, or a mugging, for example? Is that God's will? Well, perhaps this is a circumstance in which disability can be the result of sin, not any sin of the disabled person, but sin in a fallen world causing bad things to happen. Will there be disability in heaven? For the sake of this article, I'm not getting into the heaven versus new earth debate here, just using heaven as a term that could apply to either. This is, of course, Impossible to be certain of until we get there, but I'm leaning towards the view that there will be. If God made us in His image, if we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and if God gave us disabilities so that His works would be glorified, and if Paul is right in 2 Corinthians 12 when he talks about weakness, then why would we be any different in heaven? While many disabled people hope to at least leave the difficulties or pain that their disabilities might cause them behind when they reach eternity, some disabled people actively hope that their disabilities will still be present in some form in heaven. Many in the deaf community, for example, whose first language is sign language, do not feel disabled at all and prefer being how they are.
True. For example, like autism, it's kind of that way with some of us in the autistic community. I know there are some autistics that are religious, that are Christians, that do believe in the Bible and whatnot. I believe in the Bible myself. So yeah, I think that we cannot try to cure autism because that would be going against the Bible. It would be going against the Bible, and therefore we just shouldn't try to cure it. But let's continue.
Jesus bore the scars of his crucifixion on his post-resurrection body. Interestingly, although he bore those marks, he was still able to amble along the road to Emmaus the same day as his resurrection, a 7-mile walk just 3 days after his body was hung on the cross. Luke 24 verses 13 to 35. Is it possible that the evidence of disability is retained, but any associated negative consequence of disability and or pain is removed? Is that what Revelation 24:4 refers to when it talks about there will be no more death, or mourning or crying or pain? Maybe heaven itself will be a far more accessible and inclusive place too, a place free of the ableism of our current earth. A few days later Thomas was able to put his hand into the wound in Jesus' side. Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." See John 20 verses 24 to 29, especially v27. Again, this passage suggests that the evidence of disability remains in the resurrected body, but perhaps not any negative consequences or pain. This might give us a working theory for some physical or even mental disabilities, but where does neurodiversity fit within this narrative, if indeed it needs to? My son James is autistic. He also has learning disability and epilepsy. What will he retain in heaven? What will be different? If James wasn't autistic in heaven, he simply wouldn't be James. Autism is a defining part of who he is, and his neurodiversity is a difference and not a disability. But it would be great if his epileptic seizures didn't happen in heaven, for example. Can he retain a difference and not the negative consequences of a disability? It's complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, I honestly hope that. I hope that those of us that are autistic, we retain our autistic nature in heaven. I hope that.
Ultimately, of course, it's not up to us, it's up to God. One thing that we all have to recognize is that whatever our heavenly bodies are like, it is all part of His perfect plan. And maybe when we get there, it will all be so amazingly different that we won't care what of our earthly bodies, if anything, is retained. As Paul writes to the church in Corinth in his first letter, if there is a natural body, there is also a spiritual body. So it is written, the first man Adam became a living being. The last Adam, i.e. Jesus, a life-giving spirit. The spiritual did not come first, but the natural, and after that the spiritual. The first man was of the dust of the earth. The second man is of heaven. As was the earthly man, so are those who are of the earth. And as is the heavenly man, so also are those who are of heaven. And just as we have borne the image of the earthly man, so shall we bear the image of the heavenly man. I declare to you, brothers and sisters, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable. Listen, I tell you a mystery, we will not all sleep, but we will all be changed, in a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. For the perishable must clothe itself with the imperishable, and the mortal with immortality. 1 Corinthians 15:44-53. I hope these ramblings are of some use. I'm very happy to be disagreed with, and I know that there are many different views, and that there is so much to explore and learn, so we can only pray for more guidance, and in the meantime share God's grace with each other. You might have already seen this, but The Disabled God, Towards a Liberatory Theory of Disability, Nancy Iceland, 1994, might be worth a read too, although please be aware that, sadly, it's not available in any accessible formats at all.
I will have to go look into The Disabled God. But yeah, all the links from today's video will be in the description. All the links for the articles will be in the description. So if you liked the video, give me a like, and remember to turn on that notification bell and subscribe so you will never ever miss another video from me. See you guys in my next video. Bye guys.